It was a hot afternoon in New York City. The streets were busy, full of people rushing somewhere important. But no one paid attention to the man standing by the corner. His clothes were dirty and torn, his hair messy, and he carried a rusted tin can. Marcus Layton looked like just another homeless man. But Marcus was not what he seemed. Beneath the dirt and the disguise, he was a billionaire searching for something money couldn't buy: true love. Marcus's first test came when he spotted Amanda sitting outside a fancy cafe. She wore a red dress that matched her painted nails and sipped her iced coffee like she owned the world. Gathering his courage, Marcus walked toward her. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Could you help me with a little money? I'm really hungry." Amanda looked up, her blue eyes narrowing. She took a slow sip from her straw, then laughed. "Are you serious?" she said, loud enough for the other customers to hear. "You think I'd give money to someone like you?" Marcus stayed calm. "I'm just asking for a little help." Amanda leaned back in her chair, smiling in that cruel way people do when they know they're being mean. "Here's my help." She picked up a glass of water and threw it at Marcus. The water hit his shirt and dripped onto the sidewalk. People around them started laughing. Marcus stayed still, trying not to react. But Amanda wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small bottle of red cooking oil. "Let me add some color to your life," she said, then poured the oil on him. The red stain spread across his clothes, and the laughter grew louder. Amanda waved him off like he was nothing more than a fly buzzing too close. "Go find a mop," she said, smirking. "You look like you need one." Marcus walked away, his heart heavy. He could feel the stares and hear the laughter behind him, but he didn't look back. The next day, Marcus tried again. He spotted Victoria jogging in the park. She wore bright workout clothes and had a golden retriever running alongside her. Her hair was tied in a high ponytail, and she looked like someone who had her whole life perfectly together. Marcus stepped in her path, holding up his tin can. "Excuse me, miss," he said. "Could you spare a little change?" Victoria stopped, frowning at him. "Are you kidding me? Don't you see I'm busy?" "I just need a little to buy food," Marcus said, his voice calm. Victoria put her hands on her hips, her dog barking beside her. "Maybe if you stopped being lazy, you wouldn't need to beg," she snapped. Then she laughed. "Actually, you look like you belong in a dumpster. Maybe check there for food." She shook her head and jogged off, calling over her shoulder, "Don't follow me, okay? I don't have time for trash." Marcus stood there for a moment, staring after her. Her words stung, but he reminded himself that this was just another test. The third encounter happened at a small clothing store downtown. Marcus saw a young woman working the register. Her name tag read Emily. She had red hair, freckles, and a sharp, annoyed look on her face, like she hated her job. Marcus stepped inside and walked up to the counter. "Hi," he said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but could you help me with a few dollars? I haven't eaten all day." Emily stared at him like he was some kind of alien. "Are you serious?" she said, leaning closer. "You came in here to beg? Do I look like a charity?" Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but Emily cut him off. "You smell awful," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Get out of here before you scare off the customers." As Marcus turned to leave, she called after him, "And maybe take a bath sometime. You're disgusting." By the time Marcus approached Vanessa, he was starting to lose hope. She was a lawyer standing outside a courthouse, talking on her phone. She wore a black suit and looked sharp and confident, the kind of person who didn't take nonsense from anyone. Marcus waited until she finished her call before stepping closer. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm really hungry. Could you spare some change?" Vanessa looked him up and down, her face full of disgust. "Are you serious right now?" she said, loud enough for others to hear. "Do you know how expensive it is to park in this city? I can barely afford my own life, and you're asking me for money." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, backing away. Vanessa shook her head, laughing. "You're pathetic," she said. "Why don't you stop wasting time and get a real job? Oh wait, who would hire someone like you?" She waved him off like he was invisible. "Leave me alone before I call security." Despite all the insults, Marcus kept going. He told himself that not everyone would be so cruel. His persistence paid off when he met Evelyn. She was sitting on a park bench, sketching in a notebook. Her auburn hair fell over her shoulders, and she hummed softly as she drew. Something about her seemed different, kind. "Excuse me," Marcus said, stepping closer. "I don't mean to bother you." Evelyn looked up, her green eyes warm and curious. "You're not bothering me," she said, smiling. "How can I help you?" For the first time, Marcus felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, he had finally found someone who saw beyond his disguise. Marcus hesitated, unsure of how to respond to Evelyn's kind eyes and warm voice. He had grown so used to mockery that her compassion caught him off guard. Finally, he gathered his thoughts and spoke. "I haven't eaten all day," he said softly, holding up his tin can. "If you could spare anything, I'd be grateful." Evelyn studied him for a moment, then patted the empty spot on the bench beside her. "Sit," she said simply. Marcus hesitated again. This wasn't what he expected, but he obeyed, lowering himself onto the bench. His worn shoes scraped against the concrete as he sat awkwardly, clutching the tin can. Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in paper. "I don't have any cash," she said, handing it to him, "but this might help." Marcus took the sandwich with trembling hands. It wasn't just food, it was a gesture he hadn't received in a long time. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you so much." Evelyn smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to thank me. Everyone deserves kindness." As Marcus ate, they sat in comfortable silence. Evelyn went back to her sketching, occasionally glancing at him. Her notebook was filled with beautiful drawings of the city, buildings, trees, and even a few sketches of people. Marcus found himself mesmerized by her talent. "You're really good at that," he said between bites. "Thank you," she replied, her cheeks turning a light shade of pink. "It's just a hobby. I like capturing the world as I see it." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. Here was someone who didn't mock him or dismiss him. Someone who saw him as a person, not just a dirty, ragged figure on the street. For the first time in weeks, he felt something stir in his chest. Hope. As the days went by, Marcus began to visit Evelyn regularly. He would find her in the park, always sitting on the same bench with her sketchbook. Each time, she greeted him with a smile and a kind word. They talked about everything: art, life, and dreams. Marcus was careful not to reveal too much about himself, sticking to his role as a homeless man. Yet, despite his disguise, he found himself opening up to her in ways he hadn't with anyone else. Meanwhile, the women who had mocked Marcus began to notice him in subtle ways. Amanda, the first woman, saw him one afternoon walking with Evelyn. She was sitting at the same cafe where she had humiliated him weeks earlier. This time, instead of laughing, she frowned. "Isn't that the same guy?" she muttered to herself, watching as Marcus and Evelyn laughed together. She couldn't understand it. Why would someone like Evelyn, with her bright smile and graceful presence, spend time with a man like him? Amanda sipped her coffee, her thoughts swirling. She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care. But deep down, she felt a twinge of something she couldn't quite name: regret. Victoria, the jogger, had a similar experience. She was at the park again, this time with a group of friends. As they jogged past the bench where Marcus and Evelyn sat, she slowed down, her eyes narrowing. "Wait a minute," she said, stopping. "Isn't that the guy who begged me for money?" Her friends looked over, confused. "Who?" "That guy on the bench," Victoria said, pointing. "I told him to check a dumpster for food. And now he's sitting there like he's normal or something." One of her friends shrugged. "Maybe he's not as bad as you thought." Victoria scoffed, crossing her arms. "He's still gross. I don't know what she sees in him." But as she jogged away, Victoria couldn't shake the image of Marcus and Evelyn. The way they laughed together, the way Eleanor looked at him, it bothered her more than she cared to admit. Emily, the retail clerk, also crossed paths with Marcus and Evelyn. She was on her lunch break, eating a sandwich on a nearby bench. When she saw them, her jaw dropped. "Is that?" she whispered, recognizing Marcus immediately. She remembered how she had insulted him, how she had told him he didn't belong in her store. Now, seeing him with Evelyn, she felt a pang of guilt. "He's just lucky," she muttered under her breath, but the words felt hollow. As she watched them, a strange feeling settled in her chest, envy. Even Vanessa, the lawyer, noticed. She was walking out of the courthouse when she spotted Marcus and Evelyn across the street. Marcus was holding a bag of groceries, while Evelyn carried her sketchbook. They looked happy, carefree, like two people who belonged together. Vanessa shook her head, her lips curling in disdain. "Unbelievable," she muttered. But as she got into her car, she found herself glancing at them again. Something about the way they smiled at each other made her feel uneasy. Evelyn had a way of bringing peace to Marcus's chaotic days. She didn't judge him, ask invasive questions, or treat him differently because of how he looked. For Marcus, every moment he spent with her felt like a small victory in his quest for love. They often met at the park, sitting on the same bench. She would sketch while he shared stories from his life on the streets. Of course, he left out the truth about his billionaire status, but everything else, the loneliness, the rejection, was real. One day, as they sat under the shade of a large oak tree, Evelyn looked at him thoughtfully. "You know," she began, her voice gentle, "you have a way of seeing the world that most people don't. It's like you've been through so much, but you're still kind. Most people would lose that." Marcus smiled, her words warming a part of him he hadn't felt in a long time. "I think you're the kind one," he replied. "Not many people would stop to talk to someone like me." Evelyn shook her head. "That's because they don't see you. They just see what's on the outside." For a moment, Marcus wanted to tell her the truth, to reveal that he wasn't the poor, homeless man she thought he was. But he stopped himself. If she loved him for who he was now, he wanted her to love him fully before revealing his secret. Meanwhile, the women who had once mocked him were finding it harder to ignore him and Evelyn. Amanda, the first woman, couldn't get the image of them together out of her mind. She had started sitting at the cafe more often, hoping to catch another glimpse of them. One afternoon, she saw Evelyn laughing at something Marcus said. He was animated, gesturing with his hands as he told a story. Amanda frowned, her coffee forgotten. "What could he possibly be saying that's so interesting?" she muttered. A pang of jealousy stirred in her chest, though she would never admit it. The same man she had humiliated was now someone she couldn't stop thinking about. Victoria, the jogger, also found herself dwelling on Marcus. She had told herself she didn't care, that it was ridiculous to think about him at all. But the memory of Evelyn's laughter and Marcus's easy smile haunted her during her runs. One day, as she jogged past the park, she slowed down and stopped near their bench. Pretending to tie her shoe, she watched them from a distance. Evelyn had pulled out one of her sketches, showing it to Marcus. He looked at it with awe, complimenting her talent. Victoria felt a flicker of something she didn't recognize, regret. "That could have been me," she thought, shaking her head as she jogged away. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. She had treated him like dirt, and now she was paying the price for her cruelty. Emily, the retail clerk, had an even harder time dealing with her guilt. She kept replaying her words to Marcus in her head, how she had called him disgusting and told him to leave. Seeing him with Evelyn had changed something in her. One afternoon, she decided to take a different route home, hoping she wouldn't have to see them again. But fate had other plans. As she turned a corner, there they were, walking side by side. Marcus was carrying a small flower in his hand, which he handed to Evelyn with a shy smile. She blushed, tucking it behind her ear. Emily's heart sank. "I'm such an idiot," she whispered to herself. The man she had dismissed as worthless was clearly worth so much more. She wanted to apologize, but the words felt stuck in her throat. Instead, she hurried away, her face burning with shame. Even Vanessa, the lawyer, couldn't escape her growing envy. She had prided herself on being strong, independent, and above petty emotions. But every time she saw Marcus and Evelyn together, something inside her twisted. One day, as she left the courthouse, she saw them sitting on the steps of a nearby building. Marcus was talking passionately, his hands moving as he explained something. Evelyn listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. Vanessa paused, her car keys in hand. "What does she see in him?" she muttered. But the answer was clear, even if she didn't want to admit it. Evelyn saw something Vanessa had been too blind to notice: kindness, warmth, and a depth of character that went beyond appearances. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt a pang of regret. She had spent so much time building walls around herself, pushing people away, that she had forgotten how to truly connect with anyone. And now, watching Marcus and Evelyn, she realized what she had lost. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus and Evelyn became inseparable. Their connection felt natural, as if they'd known each other forever. Marcus continued to play the role of a homeless man, observing Evelyn's kindness and genuine nature. She treated him with respect, never asking intrusive questions about his past. To her, Marcus was more than his outward appearance. He was someone worth knowing and caring for. One chilly evening, as they strolled through the park, Evelyn paused by a small food cart. "Do you like hot chocolate?" she asked, turning to him with a smile. Marcus nodded, his heart warming at the simple question. "I haven't had it in years," he admitted, though the truth was he couldn't remember the last time he'd had it as Marcus Layton, the billionaire. Evelyn bought 2 cups, handing one to him. As they sipped the warm drink, they sat on their favorite bench, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Marcus couldn't help but smile as he looked at her, the steam from her cup curling around her face. "You have no idea how much this means to me," he said softly. Evelyn tilted her head, her green eyes filled with curiosity. "Why do you say that?" "It's just hot chocolate." Marcus hesitated, then smiled. "It's not the drink. It's the fact that someone cared enough to share it with me." Evelyn's cheeks flushed, and she looked away, embarrassed by the compliment. "You deserve kindness, Marcus," she said. "Everyone does." For a moment, Marcus thought about revealing the truth. But he held back. He wanted this moment to remain pure, untouched by the weight of his real identity. Meanwhile, the other women's regret was reaching new heights. Amanda, the cafe regular who had humiliated Marcus, found herself consumed by jealousy. She often saw Marcus and Evelyn together, laughing, talking, and sharing quiet moments. The more she watched, the more she realized what she had thrown away. One day, Amanda approached a mutual acquaintance who sometimes sat in the same cafe. "Do you know anything about that couple?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The man shrugged. "Not much. But they seem happy, don't they?" Amanda forced a smile, nodding. "Yeah, happy," she muttered. But inside, she was fuming. The man she had mocked was now living the kind of life she wanted. Simple, honest, and full of connection. She couldn't help but envy Evelyn and regret her own actions. Victoria, the jogger, found herself running past the park more often than usual. Each time, she hoped to catch a glimpse of Marcus and Evelyn, though she told herself it was just coincidence. One evening, she saw them walking hand in hand along the path. Evelyn was carrying her sketchbook, and Marcus was pointing out something in the distance. They looked completely at ease, lost in their own little world. Victoria stopped jogging, leaning against a tree to catch her breath. She remembered how she had dismissed Marcus as trash and told him to look in a dumpster for food. Now, seeing him so happy with Evelyn, Victoria felt a pang of guilt so sharp it made her chest ache. "I was such an idiot," she muttered to herself. But no matter how much she regretted her words, she knew it was too late to take them back. Emily, the retail clerk, had a harder time avoiding Marcus and Evelyn. They often passed by her store, their laughter drifting through the open door. Each time, Emily felt a mix of guilt and envy. She couldn't forget how she had treated Marcus, how she had insulted him and made him feel small. Now, seeing him so happy, she realized just how wrong she had been. One afternoon, Emily decided to step outside and apologize. She waited until Marcus and Evelyn were alone, sitting on their usual bench. Gathering her courage, she approached them slowly, her hands trembling. "Hi," she said awkwardly, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn looked up, smiling politely. "Hello," she said. Marcus, however, recognized Emily immediately. His expression hardened, but he said nothing, waiting for her to speak. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Emily stammered, avoiding Marcus's gaze. "For how I treated you that day. It was wrong, and I shouldn't have said those things." Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you for saying that," he said simply, his tone neutral. Emily felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. Evelyn leaned closer to Marcus, taking his hand in hers, and Emily realized she had no place in their world. She walked away, her heart heavy with regret. Vanessa, the lawyer, was perhaps the most conflicted of all. She had always prided herself on being logical and unemotional, yet she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus and Evelyn. One evening, as she left the courthouse, she saw them across the street. Marcus was holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, which he handed to Eleanor with a shy smile. Vanessa felt a pang of envy so strong it took her breath away. "Why him?" she whispered to herself. "Why not me?" For the first time, Vanessa began to question her own choices. She had spent so much time building her career, pushing people away, that she had forgotten how to let anyone in. Watching Marcus and Evelyn, she realized what she was missing, a genuine connection, something money and status couldn't buy. That evening, as they sat on their bench under the stars, Marcus made a decision. It was time to tell Evelyn the truth. But he needed to do it in a way that wouldn't change the love they had built. He wanted her to know him completely, not just as the man she saw now, but as the man he truly was. "I need to tell you something," he said softly, turning to her. "Something important." Eleanor looked at him, her expression curious but unafraid. "What is it?" Marcus took a deep breath, preparing to reveal the secret he had been hiding all along. The night air was crisp, and the park was quieter than usual. Marcus and Evelyn sat on their favorite bench, the glow of the city lights illuminating their faces. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to tell her the truth. He had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, doubt crept in. Would she still see him the same way? Would her kindness change once she knew who he really was? "I haven't been completely honest with you," Marcus began, his voice low but steady. Evelyn tilted her head, curiosity filling her eyes. "What do you mean?" Marcus exhaled deeply, staring at his hands for a moment before meeting her gaze. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm not homeless, and I'm not struggling to survive." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "My name is Marcus Layton, and I'm a billionaire." Evelyn blinked, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she said nothing, and Marcus felt his stomach twist in knots. Finally, she spoke. "You're a billionaire," she repeated slowly, as if trying to process the words. "Yes," Marcus said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've built a life of wealth and success, but it's come at a cost. I've been surrounded by people who only cared about my money, not me. That's why I disguised myself, to find someone who could love me for who I really am, not what I have." Evelyn's eyes searched his face, her expression softening. "And you think that person is me?" Marcus nodded, his heart racing. "Yes. You've shown me kindness and love when I had nothing to offer but myself. You're the only person who's ever seen me for who I truly am." Evelyn was quiet for a moment, then reached out and took his hand. "I don't care about your money, Marcus," she said softly. "I care about you. The man who sat with me on this bench, who shared stories with me and made me laugh. That's the man I fell in love with." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. "You don't know how much that means to me," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Evelyn smiled, squeezing his hand. "I just want you to be honest with me from now on. No more secrets." Marcus nodded, his eyes shining with gratitude. "No more secrets." The next day, Marcus decided to reveal his true identity publicly, starting with the women who had mocked him. He wanted them to see that their treatment of him had been a test, and they had failed. He arranged for an elegant lunch at a rooftop restaurant, inviting Amanda, Victoria, Emily, and Vanessa, along with Evelyn. When the women arrived, they were stunned to see Marcus standing at the head of a long, beautifully set table. Gone were the torn clothes and unkempt hair. He was dressed in a tailored suit, his confident demeanor unmistakable. Evelyn stood by his side, radiant as always. "Welcome," Marcus said, his voice firm yet calm. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here." Amanda was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "Marcus, I don't understand. Is this really you?" "Yes, Amanda," Marcus said, his gaze steady. "This is who I am. The man you mocked and humiliated is the same man standing before you now." Victoria's face turned red as she stammered, I didn't know. I didn't mean." "You didn't know," Marcus interrupted, his tone sharper. "But that's the point. You judged me without knowing anything about me. You treated me like I was less than human." Emily looked down at her hands, her cheeks burning with shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was wrong." Vanessa, however, tried to maintain her composure. "You can't blame us for assuming," she said defensively. "You looked the part." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "And that's exactly why I did it. To see how people would treat me when I had nothing to offer. Evelyn was the only one who passed the test. The rest of you failed." The women sat in silence, their regret evident. They glanced at Evelyn, who held Marcus's hand, her expression calm but proud. She had won the heart of the man they had dismissed, and now they could only watch as she stood by his side. As the lunch continued, Marcus made it clear that he held no grudges. "This isn't about revenge," he said. "It's about showing you the consequences of your actions. I hope this experience teaches you to look beyond appearances and treat everyone with kindness." The women nodded, their faces a mixture of shame and gratitude. They left the lunch with heavy hearts, knowing they had lost something extraordinary. That evening, Marcus and Evelyn returned to their favorite bench in the park. The stars twinkled above them as they sat hand in hand, enjoying the peaceful night. "I think you made your point today," Evelyn said with a smile. Marcus chuckled. "I hope so. But honestly, I don't care about them anymore. All that matters is you." Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart full of love. "And all that matters to me is us." As they sat together, the world around them seemed to fade away. For Marcus, his journey had been worth every moment of pain and rejection. He had found the love he had been searching for, a love that was pure, unconditional, and true. The revelation of Marcus's true identity spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up the story of the billionaire who had disguised himself as a homeless man to find true love. People marveled at his courage and honesty, while others debated the morality of his test. Through it all, Marcus remained grounded, focusing on his relationship with Evelyn. That evening, Evelyn invited Marcus to her small apartment for dinner. The cozy space was filled with the aroma of roasted vegetables and freshly baked bread. Marcus looked around, taking in the little details that made the place so uniquely Evelyn. The sketches pinned to the walls, the well-loved books stacked on every surface, and the soft throw blankets draped over the couch. "This feels like home," Marcus said, smiling. Evelyn glanced at him from the kitchen, her cheeks tinged pink. "It's nothing fancy," she said. "But it's mine." Marcus walked over and took her hands in his. "It's perfect," he said softly. "Just like you." Dinner was simple but heartfelt, filled with laughter and stories. Marcus felt more at ease than he ever had in his life. After they ate, they sat on the couch, Evelyn resting her head on Marcus's shoulder. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Marcus said, his voice thoughtful. "For years, I thought love wasn't for me. I thought people only saw the money, the status." Evelyn lifted her head to look at him. "But you found me," she said, her green eyes filled with warmth. "And I found you." Marcus leaned down and kissed her gently, the moment filled with a quiet intensity. For the first time, he felt truly at peace. Elsewhere in the city, the four women who had rejected Marcus were grappling with their feelings. Amanda sat at her usual cafe, staring at her untouched coffee. She replayed the moment she had poured water and red oil on Marcus, cringing at her own cruelty. "I was so shallow," she whispered to herself. She had lost a chance at something real, and she knew it. Victoria, the jogger, couldn't bring herself to return to the park. The memory of Marcus and Evelyn laughing together haunted her, a constant reminder of what she had thrown away. She began to question her own values, wondering if she had been running away from more than just her problems. Emily, the retail clerk, avoided the street where Marcus and Evelyn often walked. She couldn't face them, knowing the hurt she had caused. She spent her days reflecting on her behavior, vowing to treat people with more kindness moving forward. Vanessa, the lawyer, struggled the most. She had built her life on power and control, but seeing Marcus's love for Evelyn had shaken her to the core. She realized that all her success meant nothing if she couldn't open her heart to others. For the first time, Vanessa felt truly alone. As the weeks passed, Marcus and Evelyn's love grew stronger. They began making plans for the future, blending their lives together in ways that felt effortless. Marcus introduced Evelyn to his world of business and philanthropy, while she continued to show him the beauty of a simple, authentic life. One evening, Marcus arranged a surprise for Evelyn. He led her to a rooftop garden overlooking the city, the space lit with twinkling fairy lights. A small table was set for two, complete with candles and flowers. "Marcus," Evelyn said, her voice filled with awe. "This is beautiful." Marcus took her hands, his heart pounding. "Not as beautiful as you," he said. "Evelyn, you've shown me a love I never thought I'd find. You've changed my life in ways I can't even begin to explain. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as Marcus knelt before her, holding out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple yet elegant ring, its design understated but timeless. "Will you marry me?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, his own eyes glistening. He stood, pulling her into his arms as the city lights sparkled around them. The story of their engagement spread quickly, further cementing Marcus and Evelyn's place in the public's heart. The women who had mocked Marcus saw the headlines, their regret deepening. They could only watch as the man they had dismissed built a life filled with love and happiness. Amanda began volunteering at a local shelter, hoping to atone for her actions. Victoria started working with underprivileged youth, using her fitness expertise to inspire others. Emily began treating every customer with kindness, no matter their appearance. Vanessa sought therapy, determined to break down the walls she had built around her heart. On their wedding day, Marcus and Evelyn exchanged vows in a small, intimate ceremony. The venue was filled with friends, family, and the people who had supported them along the way. As they stood under an arch of blooming flowers, Marcus looked into Evelyn's eyes and saw everything he had ever dreamed of. "You're my everything," he said, his voice steady and full of love. "I'm the luckiest man alive to have found you." Evelyn smiled, her voice trembling with emotion. "And I'm the luckiest woman to have you by my side." When they kissed, the crowd erupted into applause. It was a moment of pure joy, a testament to the power of love and the strength of the human spirit. Marcus and Evelyn began their new life together, surrounded by love and hope. The lessons Marcus had learned stayed with him, reminding him to always look beyond appearances and value what truly matters. For Marcus and Evelyn, the future was bright, a life built not on wealth or status, but on the unshakable foundation of love.